Today, China has 9 years of compulsory education and over 2,000 colleges and universities. Every year, around 400,000 students study abroad, more than any other country in the world. Just over 100 years ago, according to Timothy Richard, out of the 400 million people, only 40,000 could read, representing a literacy rate lower than 0.01%. The earliest Chinese school was founded in 1817 by Robert Morrison and William Milne in Malacca. It began with only 3 students. Ten years later, the first Chinese pastor, Liang Fa, founded the first school in mainland China with his hometown friend, Gu Tianqing. Another 10 years later, Mary Gutzlaff, wife of German missionary Karl Gutzlaff, and Yale graduate Samuel Robbins Brown founded the Morrison School, the first Western-style school in Macau. In the beginning, there were only 6 students, including the first group of students to study abroad, Yang Wing, Huang Huang, and Huang Sheng.
Brown, after teaching for a period of time, his health couldn't bear it anymore, and he was returning to the U.S. He asked his students who would be willing to come with him to study in the U.S. At this time, no one was willing to go. Formerly, learning from barbarian teachers was a shame, an indication of forgetting one's roots. Despite this, 3 students agreed to accompany Brown to the U.S., the brothers Huang Sheng and Huang Quan, as well as Yang Wing. Following in Brown's footsteps, Yang Wing attended Yale. Huang Quan went on to study medicine at the University of Edinburgh, became China's first Western medical doctor. After Yang Wing returned to China, he started an important project to help young Chinese children to study abroad. He felt that it was necessary to have people interact with the West at a young age so that they would truly understand the West. This was building a foundation. Some other important historical figures emerged from Yang Wing's Chinese educational mission. For example, Chan Tianyou, father of modern engineering, was brought out by Yang. Tang Xiaoyi, the first premier of the Republic of China, was also brought out by him. Many important figures in the modernization of China were students that Yang took abroad. It clearly influenced the subsequent trends toward learning from the West till the Republic continues today.
Before the Opium War, the missionaries had established 50 schools in China. Following the Opium Wars, by 1877, there were as many as 347 Christian schools. In 1877, the first General Conference of the Protestant Missionaries of China was held. They decided to form a committee to prepare a series of school books. Afterwards, under the leadership of missionaries Young Allen, John Fryer, Calvin Matier, William Martin, Alexander Williamson, Rudolf Leckler, 59 school books were written and compiled. Around 30,000 copies were published. Higher education came to China a few centuries later than it came to the West. The ones who finally connected China's higher education system with the rest of the world were also the Western missionaries. Missionary Calvin Matier founded the Chengzhou Boys' School in 1864, recruiting 6 students from impoverished families and providing them with stationery, clothing, and food. In 1876, the school was renamed Tengzhou College, later becoming China's first university. Another American missionary, Hunter Corbett, founded over 40 schools in Yantai, as well as a hospital and a museum. He was recognized for his work first by the Qing Emperor Guan Shi and later by President Yuan Shikai. The British missionary John Fryer established China's first science class in 1866, founded China's first polytechnic institution in 1874, and published China's first scientific magazine in 1875. He also translated over 100 scientific works into Chinese. In southern China, the earliest university was St. John's University, founded by Samuel Shereshusky, in 1879. Other early universities in China founded by missionaries include 1888, Nanking University; 1889, North China College; 1897, Hangzhou Presbyterian College. The early days of every one of these universities was extremely difficult. When Nanking University was first founded, only 3 boys enrolled. As a reward for their attendance, the university gave them a bowl of rice each day. Unlike today, where students apply to schools and pay tuition, at that time, the schools would invite students to attend and pay for their living expenses. The funds to run each school were mostly provided through donations from the missionaries' home churches. Every dollar expressed love from thousands of miles away. By 1900, on the brink of the Boxer Rebellion, missionaries had established as many as 2,000 primary schools, secondary schools, and colleges. The Boxer Rebellion was disastrous for the fledgling Chinese educational system. Schools around the country suffered from damage and destruction. The British missionary Timothy Richard convinced his government to use the indemnity funds paid by the Qing government to establish Shanxi University. American missionary Arthur Smith and others also convinced the American Congress to use their indemnity funds to establish Tsinghua College, the precursor to Tsinghua University. The other Western countries followed suit, not only using the large sums of indemnity funds to establish schools in China, but also forcing the Chinese government to reform its antiquated imperial examination system, establish science and engineering as academic subjects, and open up opportunities for its citizens to study abroad. Less than 20 years later, according to surveys in 1918, the number of schools founded by missionaries in China had surged from the 2,000 before the Boxer Rebellion to a total of 7,382 schools. Earlier, Timothy Richard had suggested to Li Hengzheng that the government should commence educational reform by setting apart 1,000,000 taels of silver annually for it. Li replied that the Chinese government could not afford so great a sum. When Richard explained that this was seed money, which would be returned 100-fold, Li asked, when would that be? When Richard answered, it will take 20 years before you can realize the benefits of modern education, Li simply said, ah, we cannot wait as long as that. Neither Li Hengzheng nor Timothy Richard could have thought that the Boxer Rebellion would lead to the Qing government being forced to pay out large indemnity funds, and that indemnities would then be used for the development of Chinese education. This was the equivalent of forcing the government to set aside a large sum for investing in education. The Bible says, there is a time to plant and a time to harvest. Those who plant in tears will harvest with shouts of joy. Just before the formation of the People's Republic of China, Vice Chairman Liu Shaoqi wrote a report to Joseph Stalin. Britain and the U.S. alone have established 31 universities and specialized schools, 29 libraries, 324 high schools, and 2,364 elementary schools.